We're in the process of renovating our bathroom, and there's some exclusive videos about that available via channel membership and Patreon, links down below. Anyway, I wanted to build a floating style sink cabinet using some birch plywood, as that's the material we want to use for various things throughout the bathroom. And if you've watched one of my previous videos about when we made some kitchen worktops, again using birch ply, I mentioned in that video that we bought about 4 or maybe 5 sheets of it at the time, as the kitchen installers that we used got a pretty good trade discount at our local timber merchant, so it made sense to take advantage of that and buy a few sheets. The reason I didn't film this particular project was because our plumber was due to arrive in a couple of days' time, and I only had 1 day available to get it built and finished, ready for the sink to be installed. Here's what I designed on SketchUp, and this again is a very simple design which we plan to use as somewhere to store some towels underneath the sink, and for our new sink to sit on top of, obviously. And you might already be able to guess what mistake 1 of a total of 4 mistakes was from this design, especially if there are any plumbers watching. There's a clue for you. So this was basically a simple mitered plywood box with dominoes reinforcing the corners and housing joints cut into the top and bottom panels to accommodate a central divider, and then a rebate cut around the back edges cut with the router to accommodate the back panel. I've done projects similar to this before, like for example the large shoe rack that I made, which was a similar construction. I'll link to that in the description box below if you're interested. But what I will say is that I did a dry fit of all of the joints before assembling, particularly to make sure that the central divider was the perfect size, because if it was slightly too small I'd have a gap in the joint, and if it were too big the mitre joints wouldn't seat together properly. Anyway, the dry assembly went fine, so I glued and clamped it up, waited for a few hours and then took off the clamps. I did some sanding and finished the whole unit apart from the top surface using some water-based varnish. The reason I didn't finish the top was because I had the bright idea of using some offcuts of the laminate that we use to make our kitchen worktops, which would make the sink unit more durable and waterproof. And here is mistake number 2, and by the way I'll reveal mistake number 1 shortly too. So mistake number 2 was that I hadn't really stored the leftover laminate in a very good way. Months ago, when we were finished with making the kitchen worktops, I rolled up the offcuts using some masking tape and left them in our sunroom, which is a lean-to extension on the side of our bungalow. Since then, it's had some very hot and cold weather, and that had resulted in the laminate being A, not very pliable, meaning that it was really difficult to get it flat again, and B, being quite brittle, meaning that it was prone to snapping if bent in the wrong way. After cutting it to size with the track saw, I tried various ways to try and get it flat before I could think about applying glue. So I tried using a heat gun and carefully trying to bend it back the opposite way to which it was originally rolled, and it cracked. So that was mistake number 3. I didn't have any other pieces large enough to use instead, so I had 3 options. I could either buy a new sheet of laminate, but that's really expensive, so I didn't want that one. I could forego the laminate instead and just use varnish, but I really wanted the protection of the laminate. Or I could try to use it anyway and hope that I could make that crack unnoticeable as much as possible. I decided to give the latter option a try. I could apply the glue to both the back of the laminate and the top of the cabinet. And before doing that, I also masked off the side and front panels of the cabinet, as I didn't want to get glue on those. And while I don't have any footage of doing that to the sink unit, I do have footage of another small piece that will be used as a shelf above our toilet, also in the bathroom. And if you'd like any more detail on this process, do check out the video where we made our kitchen worktops, as it's covered there in great detail. Link in the description box below. And then as soon as I got to that crack in the laminate, I gave that plenty of attention to get that looking as good as I could possibly get it. And it actually went pretty well. The crack was barely noticeable. At that point, I could then use my trim router with a flush cut bit to trim away the excess laminate. Next, the back panel could then be glued and screwed into the rebates on the back. As these screws are on the back, no one will ever see them, and this is going to add a lot of strength to something that is going to have a considerable amount of weight placed on top of it. And then I routed out some material from the back panel to allow me to add 4 of these button fixings, 1 in each corner. Each of these fixings is capable of taking weight of around 80 kilograms, so using 4 of them gives a total of 320 kilograms, which will be plenty. And the other benefit of using these fixings in the way that they are recessed into the back panel is that it will allow the sink unit to sit flush to the wall with no gaps. I also made a drilling template which could be used to drill the holes into the wall for adding the button parts of the fixings in the perfect location ready for the unit to be wall mounted. Job done, or so I thought. Now on to mistake number 4, although this one is kind of linked with mistake number 2, which was having not stored the laminate correctly. Before the unit was fitted to the wall, I noticed that along the short edges of the unit, the laminate was starting to lift. I could tap it with my fingernail and hear that it was not secured properly. It was absolutely fine in the middle, so it definitely wasn't a problem with the glue that I used. So I think it was purely down to the laminate still having quite a lot of tension in it, again from it being rolled up, so it still wanted to curl up. So at that point, I placed some grease-proof paper onto the laminate and then used a clothes iron set to a medium heat to press down the veneer firmly to both reactivate the glue and also hopefully get the edges of that laminate more relaxed so that they wouldn't want to curl up again and put stress on the glue. And luckily for me, that actually worked great and completely resolved the issue. I left it overnight and came back to it and the laminate was still really secure. Crisis averted. So now back to mistake number 1, which I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure a few of you would have probably already guessed this. With the sink placed centrally on top of the unit, right where we wanted it, that central divider that I had glued and screwed in place was right in the way of where the waste fitting would need to be. This is obviously a really stupid mistake and one that I'm pretty embarrassed about, to be honest, and I can put it down to A, being in a hurry to get the job done, B, obviously not thinking it through properly, and C, being so busy trying to juggle 2 day jobs and a house renovation all at the same time that I just wasn't thinking straight. So we had 2 options. The sink could either be placed off center over to one side to allow space for the waste trap underneath, but I really wasn't happy with that option. Or I could try and cut away part of that central divider to create space for the waste trap. So that's what I did. I started by drilling a hole through the top for the waste using a hole saw bit, and then I used a multi-tool to slowly make plunge cuts all of the way through to create an opening which had to be large enough not only to accommodate the waste trap, but also allow access for it to be unscrewed in the event of it ever getting clogged. And that took quite a bit of time, to be honest, but it worked out okay in the end. I wasn't sure at this point whether I'd be wall mounting the unit or whether our plumber would do it, and as I was busy with other things when he visited, he was happy to do it himself, so I gave him the drilling template. He fitted it to the wall. He also used a product called ChemFix to secure the roll plugs into the wall for some additional strength before adding the screws and buttons. And I have to say he did a great job and it is rock solid, so I don't have any concerns about it. Despite all the many mistakes and problems encountered throughout the project, it actually turned out just fine. That crack in the laminate is barely visible, so I doubt anyone but me will ever know it's there. And in the end, I think it turned out pretty nice. Since then, I've been building another large bathroom storage cabinet using more of the birch ply. That's a project that I am fully filming, and that will be featured in a video coming soon to the channel. Usually on these kind of projects, I get 1 or 2 comments saying that I need to add edge banding to the plywood edges. I just want to explain that the exposed end grain of the plywood is actually a look that we really like, and that's why we're keeping them visible. So that's about it, I think. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry that there wasn't lots of video footage to go with it this time around, but I hope that you at least found this interesting or even entertaining because there were lots of mistakes. Please subscribe for more weekly woodworking videos. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so via PayPal or Patreon or YouTube channel membership, where you can get early access to my videos, exclusive content like the bathroom renovation videos I mentioned, free project plans and cut lists, and a name credit at the end of my videos. Thank you for watching.